That's right. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Bridging the Gap here on the Jersey First TV network. As always, I'm AJ Malillo,
And I'm Stephen Rombolo.
and you can check out all your Jersey First related content on Jersey First TV on YouTube, where you can get Bridging the Gap, The Nader Narrative, Real Talk with Fernando. You can also check us out on demand anytime on OnNJ.com, and you can check out JerseyFirst.org, where you can sign the newsletter, sign up for the newsletter, and sign the pledge, making Jersey first. So, hit that notification bell, hit that subscribe button, and check us out. Get all your content that you might need. But Steven, you're if for those that are watching, they can see that you're back in your college apartment, your law school apartment
Yes,
down
sir.
in the FLA, the Sunshine State. What's going on? How was your I know you have a little bit of a travel nightmare story, so
I did.
maybe if
I
you want to
did.
talk a little bit about that, how your week has been going.
Yeah. So, like AJ said, we're back in Orlando. I got here. Well, it should have been yesterday. It turned out to be, I guess, this morning, technically. Had some delays. We had an issue on the plane yesterday. I was leaving out of Atlantic City where the little tunnel that connects to the actual plane wouldn't detach. So then they tried to pull the aircraft back, and that didn't work. And then they said it was going to take 2 hours. So they deplaned everybody, and then everybody had to get back on another plane. And then once that plane was fully boarded, we waited another 40 minutes so that they could then unload the luggage from the first plane to put it onto the second plane. And while all of this is happening, once the plane gets deboarded, everybody gets a text message, an automated text message for a meal voucher for $7 that was to expire the next day. However,
Are you
when we
going to
got,
McDonald's?
huh?
I said, are you going to McDonald's? $7?
No, it's a airline only voucher, so you can only use it on their plane. And here is the gimmick: we get on the plane, and the lady says those vouchers that you guys just got sent aren't actually going to work for this flight. You're going to have to wait for another one. The plane was chaos. I felt like I was in one of those videos, like those internet videos where it's like planes that sit on the tarmac for a little bit too long. People started yelling. There was some lady ended up like almost, I guess, forfeiting her seat and getting off the plane. She didn't want to be on it. But while I was sitting there, I had nothing to do. I was traveling alone. So after they sent the meal voucher, I made sure I did the law student thing to do, and I went up and I read about the airline's policies when it comes to delays and what I'm actually eligible for. And it turns out that I was eligible for some other compensations so long as I didn't accept the meal voucher. So the airline's probably not a big fan of me, but I was going around telling people like, "Yo, just send them a DM. They'll send you a $50 flight voucher. All you have to do is ask," instead of the $7 voucher that we couldn't even use. So that was a bit of a nightmare, but I'm happy I'm back. I did all my grocery shopping. I'm locked, loaded, ready for a big semester ahead, and just can't wait to get back in the routine that I've created for myself down here. I love it. I feel very productive, and I've been waiting for it. So
Well, that's good. That's good mindset to be in. And look, I mean, that was a flight. That sounds like the beginnings of a flight from hell, but at least it wasn't that Alaskan Airlines flight. Which people didn't see. I'm showing it on the screen for those that are looking. A window pane just completely blew out of this airline flight, this Alaskan airline flight. Had to immediately like land. The masks dropped. I'm pretty sure like a teddy bear flew out of the window. Luckily, nobody got hurt. So look, it was bad, but as with a lot of bad things in life, Stephen, could have been worse.
could have been much worse. And you know what, since we brought it up real quickly, I'll say something about that. So that's been an issue that's going on with a lot of these 757s from Boeing. And this week, the FAA was just pushing through a bunch of tests, and there were a few airlines that did less than spectacular on the maintenance and safety requirements for their Boeing planes. And I know this is something that a few years ago, the Trump administration had actually, sort of hounded Boeing about. And I just think it's crazy that we're flash forward a few years in the future and doors are flying off of planes midair. It's a scary place to be.
Yeah, no, Stephen, I was listening to somebody talk about this, and I think that they made a good point where it's like, if this is what's going to start happening to airlines in the United States of America, like, what makes us so much better than like any other country? Like one of the things that makes America so special, one of the many, is that things work here. They just work. And we have a lot of political disagreement. We have a lot of like angst and strife right now. But guess what? Buses are usually on time, trains are usually on time, planes are usually on time. You get from point A to point B mostly in one piece most of the time. But like doors are gonna start flying off of planes. We're gonna have these issues. Like obviously your issues flying out was probably because of the storm or something
Yes.
along those lines, right? So it's like, okay, it's understandable that happens. But like if planes aren't gonna be reliable and infrastructure's falling apart and once we think that there's chaos in our country right now, but just imagine when the trains don't come and the buses don't show up and the planes fall out of the sky. Like that's one thing that's always worked. And
It
it's
is.
scary because you're starting to see like these sprinkles of things not working anymore.
It is. And I think this is, I love how we just jumped right into this. I want to circle back and we'll catch up with you. But my final point on this little tangent that we're taking, I think to add to your list of things, we can't forget, about the, you know, numerous trains that were derailed and dumping chemicals around. So like this is functionally what looks like to me the beginning of a crumbling nationwide infrastructure, but in a very public way. Like we've known for a long time, like, yeah, the roads in the Northeast aren't the best. And, maybe the railroads out in the Midwest could use a little rebuff and, this, that, and the next. But I mean, I can recall within the past year, we had the trains, that were, tipping, overturning, spilling things. We have doors flying off of planes. We have the section of I-95 that crumbled in Philadelphia. Like, there is a serious need for a legitimate infrastructure discussion in this country, and we would rather talk about things like what kind of crack Hunter Biden smokes, and
And
although
what kind of ice cream Joe Biden eats.
yes, that's those are the important conversations that we're having in this country. But an even more important conversation is how AJ Malillo's week has been. AJ,
You know, we're rocking and rolling, we're getting through it. Technically this isn't my first week back to school, but it's my first week back to school. I have been in this business module. Basically, it's like a 1 week MBA course where like I've learned accounting and evaluating a company and like valuations for companies. And now I'm doing a negotiation, trying to get a deal done on Friday, like a mock negotiation. So it's tough because I'm not a numbers guy. Not a big math guy. I'm a words guy. So
hmm
that's tough. But you know what? I will say this. As dreadful as it is to sit through like an accounting and valuation class when you really have no idea what's going on and they like you are supposed to learn like semesters worth of material in 3 hours, but like not really. They don't actually expect that, but they throw it all at you. You know what I mean?
hmm
So it's like really straining on the brain as that is. I think that I've learned a lot in this week. I can honestly say that I've learned a lot this week. And it has made me prepared to get back in that mindset come next week when school actually starts and I'll be actually doing things that I enjoy, like reading instead of doing math. So
there you go. There you go.
so it reminds me why I'm here in the first place and why I didn't, go to business school or something like that.
Yeah, that is probably a great little refresher on why we're not doing number things. I remember my version of that was when I was in contracts and we had to learn equations that they use to determine damages. And he was like, "It's going to be simple arithmetic," and then he put a number up there. It was like 33,469, and I was like, "Nope, that's too many different numbers. Like we're already off to a bad start."
I did learn that it feels like, at least from what I've learned, accountants make up numbers. They just make them up. And they have an equation. They have an equation that gets there, but like you're just guessing
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
listen, man, that's why we're going to be lawyers, right?
Yeah, that's right. But look, I'm excited. School is starting up again. So maybe at the end of the show, we'll wrap up with some advice, some talking about getting ready, getting back in the semester if you're in college or grad school or law school or whatever the case may be. That Martin Luther King weekend is usually that last weekend, and then classes usually start up Tuesday. So we're getting in the swing of that again. So we could talk a little bit about that. But see, we were talking about crumbling infrastructure before, and I think that a good place to start is an issue that we've noticed in New Jersey. And you, Stephen, have firsthand knowledge of this. It happened to on your street, let alone across the Garden State as is, which is severe flooding that we saw because this week, I'm sure everybody listening knows, we got hit with a nor'easter. There's a lot of rain. But right before that, we got hit with another nor'easter that had a lot of snow, especially up in North Jersey, and rain in South Jersey. And because of that, rivers were over flooding and flowing out onto the streets, and there was really, really bad flooding across the state of New Jersey. Steve, I don't know if you have the pictures or videos from your place, but if you can get them up, take your time. But I think it's important to cover this story because it's something that we've been increasingly seeing. The Delaware River, the Potomac, or not the Potomac, the Passaic River, excuse me. I guess in your case, it was what more the Bay that flooded,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
Barnegat Bay. So these waterways are flooding, and the question is why? And some say that it's because of global warming and rising water levels and things of that case, and that might be all well and good and play a role. But I think the bigger problem is the fact that we don't really dredge out our rivers, and Trenton has actively stopped people from clearing out these rivers, which causes flooding to happen even more. Down trees and um, debris from these storms that all flows into our rivers. And if we can't dredge up our rivers, if we can't de-gunk our rivers, so to speak, these floods are going to happen every single time. And if towns are going to continue to be blocked by this administration in doing so, then how much do you really care about the environment like you're claiming? It seems like you are hiding behind the environment to not do things that any effective government would.
Oh boy. So this is an issue, AJ. I know you had mentioned, and while you were talking, I sent you the video that I took from my front porch. I don't know if you could be able to pull it up.
Yeah, I'm gonna try. So I'll let you go on that.
Um, but I agree with you. So, like you had said, this recently, at least this past week's events, stem from the nor'easter that we had, and I obviously, aside from my personal experiences, which I'll talk about in a minute, but just to what you were saying about the government perception of this and government presence and all these things. Phil Murphy had done a good job, in my opinion, at least. Excuse me, by making sure that there was a state of emergency declared prior to the storm's actual arrival in New Jersey. I know this is something that a few years ago, what was like a big issue for Murphy. Apparently, he was calling state of emergencies left and right. But to me, I'd rather be safe than sorry. I'd rather have access to all of the additional funds and resources that come with that kind of a declaration. So I will say, hats off to Murphy, at least for working on being prepared. If there's one thing that New Jerseyans do well, it is they prepare for these major weather events, because where we're situated in the North Atlantic, this is just kind of par for the course. But what I did see, which was blowing my mind actually, and we happened to live in this area for a little bit of time, but like you had mentioned, up near the Potomac and these other rivers in North Jersey, there was flooding so severe that it was dislodging people's homes. There was like structures that were stuck under bridges. It was quite devastating for North Jersey. And I know that is not the area that a lot of people would normally assume to be, hit by this kind of a storm. They would think about where I'm from, down the shore, Seaside Heights, all these Ocean City, different places down the shore. And it's a different kind of flooding. And so I think that we have to have sort of a two-part discussion. We need to talk about how we're going to protect coastal communities that border the bays and the beaches of New Jersey, but then we also need to have a conversation about how we're going to protect these communities that sit next to these rivers that have these really high ceilings for how much water they can actually bring into a community and the amount of surge that is able to push through into these waterways. So I think it's going to require a really focused and almost like community specific solution. I know, at least in my experiences on the shore, what has proven to work for us is nothing. Truthfully, nothing has proven to work since the hurricane back in 2012, Hurricane Sandy. There's been a lot of dredging efforts to dredge out the ocean and pump that sand back up, but they never get the funds approved in time. The construction always starts late. Midway through hurricane season, we've already lost most of the beach, and you're making up on lost ground. So we're never really getting any fresh growth in there. Another big issue, at least on the shore, is protecting the dunes and making sure that the coastal vegetation that sits in the bay, as well as on the beach, is able to be healthy and flourish. Because when those roots grow deep enough and they form, these large conglomerates and collectives, it works almost as a sponge to absorb a lot of this water that comes in, and it filters it too. So it's really great for the health of the local ecosystem to do these sort of holistic and natural solutions. When you look at the communities up north and the way that they just got affected recently over this past week, I don't know as much about how you protect communities that sit in these low floodbed areas when these waterways and these rivers are eligible or liable to have these crazy surges. Is it building some sort of dam structures to regulate water flow? Is it adding walls, where we can make seawalls along the banks of these rivers? I'm not entirely sure, but what I am certain about is that something does need to be done, because at the end of the day, the property damage that floods can cause is irreparable in some cases. It's powerful. It takes people's lives. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is one of these things that's happening with more frequency. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to tell you that if it happens every time, regardless of how often it happens, regardless of how bad it actually is, if these floods are getting into people's homes, if it's flooding the streets, if it's calling for emergency services to come out and need to rescue people, we need to do something about it. And so I think that we just need to kind of have a conversation and really focus on, protecting first and foremost the lives of the New Jerseyans who sit in these really treacherous places, but also the property and the natural vegetation and the ecosystems that sit here as well, because they all play a vital role in making sure that we can address this issue properly. So I think it's a pretty loaded question, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a collective effort. It's going to require different solutions for different communities. So we just have to be ready to assess and handle a task of that size.
Right. No, I think that's a great point. And unfortunately, I've been trying to get this video up, but it's not looking like it's going to work. But unfortunately, it seems like our governor is more concerned with being the greenest governor in the country, quote unquote, than actually helping these communities do anything about this flooding issue. And it happens with every single storm. And like you said, if something happens with every single storm, that means there's a bigger problem at play. And it's like, okay, maybe you might say that the reason this flooding occurs is because of global warming or climate change. And look, I'm not here to argue that. But what I am here to argue is then you should let people fix the problem when it happens, because climate change, the climate is changing, has changed, and now this is the new normal we have to deal with. So we have to do things to prevent this property damage and possibly, if it gets so bad, loss of human life from occurring. So if we know how to fix that, if we have an idea at least on how to fix that, which would be dredging up these rivers, taking out all of the things that have gotten caught in the river that causes the flooding, like you explained, dredging the beaches and the things, and helping with the dunes on the shore, being proactive instead of reactive to these problems, and actually helping and being there as the state government to help the local governments do what they are telling you they need to do. And guess what? It's not just Republicans that are having these issues from the Murphy administration. It's Democratic mayors too in North Jersey that are trying to do the right thing for their constituents and are being blockaded by the Murphy administration, and have been for the last, what is it, Steve, now 6 years?
Mm-hmm.
So get your act together.
7, actually. I think they're on their 7th year. Beginning of the 7th year.
It's the beginning of the 7th year, right? So, I don't know. It just seems like a lot of things in politics. it seems like a simple solution, and that's why it'll never be fixed.
Exactly, and unfortunately, and it's a shame that we couldn't get that video up. But I mean, this was literally like I went to bed on Monday night. I woke up Tuesday, or no, I'm sorry, I went to bed Tuesday night. I woke up Wednesday, and there was multiple inches, like covered the tops of my feet, almost above my ankles, right at the end of my steps. And I live 2 blocks away from either the beach or and the ocean, both of them. So the fact that the waterways flooded that much, came up through the sewers. Oh, here we go.
Did I get it up? But yeah, no, like you said, you could see how high it is on the street. It's basically up to the first step at your neighbor's house. Luckily, all those houses are raised after Sandy, right? But look,
Correct.
you're like right up on the first step right there.
Correct. And so with the angle that started from, that was facing the bay, the Barnegat Bay, and that always floods. That corner, as long as I've been alive, has collected water during rainstorms. But this is the first time in my life, in a non-major weather event, that I have seen residual flooding, because this didn't happen, as the rain was pouring. This is a result of the rain sitting, and then the tides actually, shifting around. So when high tide comes in, high tide in the ocean, well, excuse me, high tide in the bay and in the ocean pushes all that water through the smaller channels into the bay, and then it's a very complicated system. But point being, that's the first time I've ever seen anything like that, and it's not going to be the last time. I know that for a fact. So we need to continue to do the things. And Tom's River specifically seems like they do nothing every year to protect the coastal community over there, and that's been a gripe of mine for, again, probably so long as I can understand, whose job it is to fix those issues. So it's going to be a long journey forward. I know that there's been some inventive solutions that people pose. There's ideas of putting a seawall out in the ocean to help regulate, almost like what they did in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. But until I actually see tactile plans and we have somebody in office who's willing to hear different solutions, proposed to them, I think we're going to be in a tough spot.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I think that's absolutely true. But Steve, unfortunately, we do have to move on to another story. Although that's going to be a continuing story in the state of New Jersey, and hopefully it can be something that can be fixed if enough people start talking about it. But the other story, Steve, is that a big news happened last night at the time we were recording this, a few days ago, if you're watching. Um, and that is former governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, has officially ended his campaign to be the president of the United States. And he did so swinging, Stephen. He went
He did.
out fully swinging at Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, and obviously at Donald Trump, who he said that he will continue to fight against. But the bigger news, especially him going after Nikki Haley. I think that everybody, including myself, would think as soon as Christie dropped out of this race, that's the first person he would throw his support behind. But I'll play this clip of him going down on him on the hot mic and what he said about Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley. So this is him caught on a hot mic. He didn't know people were listening, but this is a lesson for all of you out there. One of the first lessons of media and journalism is that treat every mic like it's a hot mic. So here it is. Here's Chris Christie on the hot mic.
People don't want to hear it, Wayne. They don't want to hear it. We know we're right, but they don't want to hear it.
Right.
And there's, we couldn't have been any clearer.
Right.
We couldn't have been any more direct or worked any harder. So,
Let's not forget she spent 68 million.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
we spent like
Oh, when you give land to China and places like that.
Yeah,
if
that's
you're
what
gonna-
you get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, she spent 68 million so far, just on TV. Spent 68 million so far, 59 million by DeSantis, and we spent 12. I mean, who's punching above their weight and who's getting a return on their investment, And she's going to get smoked. And you and I both know it. She's not up to this.
she hasn't even
And she's still 20 points behind Trump in New Hampshire, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And he's still gonna carry out, right?
Yes. Oh, I talked to DeSantis called me, petrified that
But
I
he's-
would.
He's probably getting out after Iowa.
So that was him caught on the hot mic there, and you can hear him say it. Like, look, I've spent a lot less money, and I'm dropping out, and they're not getting a return on their investment. Nikki Haley's going to get smoked in this. She's not up for it. and Ron DeSantis was petrified I would drop out before Iowa because that's going to force him to drop out when he doesn't perform well in Iowa. And I think,
True.
first of all, I think he's completely right about DeSantis. And look, the thing about Ron DeSantis is that he was stuck between a rock and a hard place with this. If he is running in any other election based off of what happened with COVID and all that stuff, like where we were leading into the 2024 election, if Donald Trump isn't the person he's running against, he's the front runner of this Republican, ticket, and it's between him and Haley 100%. Like, and they're duking it out. But because Trump is there, Ron DeSantis is left without a lane to run in. He is too much of a right-wing populist to run in the establishment lane, and he's too much of a politician to outflank Trump on the anti-establishment lane. He's a man without a home, he's got no tribe, basically. Anybody that likes Ron DeSantis a lot probably also likes Donald Trump a lot, or likes Nikki Haley a lot. Nikki Haley has found her niche, which is this anti-Trump, anti-populist lane of the Republican Party, this neocon lane. And that's fine, and that's good, and that's a large segment of the Republican Party. It's not going to win this primary. And I don't like the phrasing that she's not up for it. I think she's up for the job of presidency. I think she's up for the campaign of presidency. Donald Trump is a juggernaut in this Republican primary. And we knew from the beginning, he was up by 40 points in the beginning. And they've chipped away, but they're not getting anywhere close to Trump. They just aren't. He's the guy on the ticket. Whether you want to admit it or not, he has been from the beginning. He might as well be running unopposed. That's how far ahead he's been this entire time. Literally, the man hasn't stepped on a debate stage, Steve. It doesn't matter.
Listen, you're absolutely correct about everything you said. I'll say this first and foremost. With regard to Christie, it's always a tough loss when he bows out. I was upset when he bowed out of governorship, albeit he reached his term limit, but bowed out nonetheless. I was upset when he bowed out in 2016. I am equally as upset now. I think that Chris Christie is an incredible, brilliant, well-spoken, and just like hard-talking politician. I really enjoy his style. I really believe that he shook up the race, and everything that he was saying about himself, and the fact that he's punching above his weight class when it comes to these other candidates. I think that's something to be proud of if you're a Christie supporter, if you're part of the Christie team. And when he said that we only spent 12 million and they're spending 58 and 60, and so he's got the chops for this 100%. And I agree with you. I think if Donald Trump wasn't here, this could be a really interesting race between the three of these individuals. I think that they all have strengths and they all have, obviously weaknesses, but they all kind of balance out. And I think each one of them could be a really appealing candidate for the Republican Party. But the truth of the matter is, as unsavory as it might be, that it is Donald Trump. And I have to sort of reiterate that fact, even though you said it, because it is true. He is, if you look at any polls, and I know that we're, still a few months away from the election season. The caucuses are happening, I believe, next week in Iowa. So this is right around the corner. Like you said, 40 points. He's pulling 40 points above some of these other candidates. It is ridiculous. Like the differentials in the candidates, he's like doubling and tripling them. You know what I mean? So I think Chris Christie bowing out, maybe, like you said, you should take a lesson, treat every mic like a hot mic. It's never a good thing, especially considering his image, and everything that happened with Bridgegate, although there was no liability, on Christopher Christie's part. But just kind of that sleazeball politician image that he has, I think a clip like that doesn't really help him. However, all that to be said, he's a man of New Jersey, and if there's one thing that I love, it's a fellow New Jerseyan. So I'm sad to see him go, but I think this does make things very interesting for Iowa next week. I think next week when we talk, we'll have probably a lot to talk about with regards to how that's going to go. And just worth noting again, like you said, Donald Trump hasn't stepped foot on a debate stage. He's done, some town halls here and there, a few interviews, this, that, or whatever. But what's staggering to me and what's really important, and I think right now is when we're going to start to see exactly how strong and big this base is this is a guy that's been, largely communicating with people either via email, rally, or his own social media platform. So he's really taken a lot of time to insulate his base. Um, and by not showing up on the debates, he is the topic of a lot of the things that go down on those debate stages simply by him not being there. And Chris Christie might be to blame for that because he always loved to call it out. So I think once we finally start getting voters into polls, we'll be able to see exactly how far these margins are. And I agree with you. I think we're going to see the other two drop pretty quickly after these first few
I think we see Haley for a while. I think that she is going to get a lot of the, whatever the small percentage of the Christie support. It's around 5%. So she'll be getting that. And then I think we see Ron DeSantis drop. And I think we see a lot of Ron DeSantis go to Trump. But I don't think it's a negligible amount of Ron DeSantis supporters that would go to Haley. And I think it's a two-person race, but I don't think it's a particularly close one. I think Haley probably doesn't make it past Super Tuesday. Trump might even have the nomination locked up after Super Tuesday, but
he definitely will.
I don't know. I don't see Haley dropping. Now, another small piece of news that we can maybe cover quickly, and then we'll wrap up, is Donald Trump announced on the Fox Town Hall, which was going on at the same time as the Republican debate between Haley and DeSantis, that he has picked who he wants to be his vice president, but he will not announce it yet. So my thought is that there is another person running in this race right now who wasn't on the debate stage either. He also qualified for the debate stage. Decided not to go in Iowa, instead decided to do like a podcast town hall event with some supporters and Candace Owens and some other Iowa representatives, I believe. And that's Vivek Ramaswamy. And I genuinely think Vivek goes through the Iowa caucuses, maybe goes to New Hampshire, drops out, and that's the guy that once Donald Trump has it pretty much in the bag, he taps as his VP. Because I think what's important to remember is in this race, Donald Trump is running to be a lame duck president, right? He couldn't run again after this. He would have had 2 terms in the Oval Office. And he's kind of hand selecting his successor at this point in the Republican field. And I think that person's Vivek. This is just my hunch, obviously. I don't know. Maybe it's somebody that I'm not thinking of, out there, another Republican Trump acolyte in the party, maybe like a Christy Lake, right, in Arizona or something like that. But I have a strong sneaking suspicion that it's Vivek, and he's going to be the guy that Trump picks as his hand selected next in line for the Republican nomination.
I'm not going to take the jump and make any suggestion because I truthfully don't know enough of the prominent Republicans, honestly, that are tapped into that base. I think Ramaswamy is a very compelling candidate. I think that he would be a very interesting VP to Trump. I think Vivek is a lot more articulate about a lot of the same issues that President Trump is. So I think that could be a very interesting ticket. It's almost like you get the idea guy and then the guy that, says it and is also, young and knows how to talk to young people and is maybe less offensive and abrasive on his face. So I could see the appeal of a Vivek as a VP for Donald Trump. But
I also would really love to see Vivek and Kamala Harris on a debate stage against each other.
Well, that would just be
that
comedy.
would be fireworks and comedy gold.
It would. They should just scrap SNL at that point and start playing that. Now, I'm interested to see who it is, though. I think as we go forward this year, a lot of our expertise and what we've done, at least in media, tends to be around elections and election coverage. This is like our bread and butter. This is where we do, I think, some of our best journalism. So I'm excited. It's going to be a hot race and cool stuff to talk about.
No, for sure. I'll say this one thing before we give a couple pieces of advice for moving on to starting up the semester, and that is really briefly. I've learned one thing about a career in politics is that I hate campaigns. I hate them with a passion. Unless it's my own campaign, someday maybe I never want to work on a campaign ever again. I think that I like the idea of campaign politics bothers me and hurts me, and I'm just not a fan of it. I do love covering campaigns. I love taking that like aerial view of the
Yep.
field and being like, this is what's going on, this is who's sniping at who and why they're taking this tact and that tact. So I think we're gonna have a lot of fun with this 2024 campaign, and then maybe we'll also hopefully still be around covering that 2025 gubernatorial campaign in New
Be a
Jersey.
big one.
So, Steve, give me like handful of pieces of advice as people start to go back to school for the semester and get ready to rock and roll.
All right, I'll fire off three, and these are three that I'm personally going to take with me, and I'm going to employ, as often as they need to be. I think number one, most important thing, if you're in higher education, if you're in college, if you're in professional school, trade school, or even if you're in high school, first piece of advice I would say is every day when you wake up and you get ready to walk into the classroom, remember why you're walking into the classroom. Remember the motivation. Remember what it is you're trying to achieve, and be active and participate with that goal in mind. And almost like a dog on a treadmill and you got the bone, like see the bone. And if your class is, for me, so my classes are 2 hours long, all I'm focused on, is this class is one step closer to that goal. So I think that's the first and most important thing. Second thing for me is be prepared. And I take that to probably like a questionable, like obsessive compulsive disorder level of be prepared. But I mean, don't fall off. Read your readings, do your homework, like get good sleep, bring your food, pack your lunches if you need to pack your lunches. Like just make sure that you have all of the tools to be as successful as you can be, because I think that's something that, once you're done with the semester, once you're done with the school year, look back and you'll say, you know what? I was prepared. I showed up, I had all the tools, I was never lacking, and I gave myself the best chance of success. So I think that's number two. And number three is just be confident in yourself. Just wake up and understand that even though some days it doesn't feel like it, and some days it's going to feel, great, others not so, you're where you're supposed to be in this moment. You're here for a reason. You're learning these things for a reason. And just have confidence in yourself that you're where you're supposed to be, doing the things that you're supposed to do that are going to take you to that thing that motivates you, that number one tip, which is why are you here? So just, know your why, be prepared, and be confident. And I think if you can do all those things and personalize them, make them yours, and carry them with you every day, you will be completely set up for success. And as much as we're talking about getting back to school, I think that goes for anything in life, whether it's starting a new hobby or a new job or a new semester. But those are the things that I'm doing. I'm also taking it to another crazy level. I read a little bit a while ago about something Tiger Woods used to do, where he would write these affirmations on a piece of paper, and he would have like 5 or 6 like little phrases on it, and there'd be like one taped above the TV in his room, and one right when he gets out of the shower in the morning. And so I'm going to start putting little motivational notes all around my room, and creating an environment to be successful.
No, I love it, and I think that your 3 pieces of advice are golden, and I'm gonna give 3 pieces of advice that are pretty much the same as yours, but maybe a little bit more pointed, but of the same ilk and vein. I think my first piece of advice, and again, this is for school or anything else, never be afraid to ask the question. If you have a question, I promise you somebody else in that room has a question too. If you don't understand something, I guarantee you somebody else doesn't understand something more foundational than what you don't understand. So always ask the question. Never be afraid to ask the question. So that's my first piece of advice. And I think that goes with anything, not just school, not life, work,
Great one.
whatever it
Great
is.
one.
The second thing is we Our brains are still trained at this point to remember better when you write things down as opposed to when you type things out. So if you are in school, write your notes down. I know typing is efficient. I know typing is easier, but laptops are distracting. Even if you don't think they are, like we all know they are, you probably have a MacBook and you probably have your iMessages right there for you to come up on your screen as you're in school. Write it down. Grab a pen, grab a notebook, and write your notes. I think that you'll see how long that goes, like how much further that will take you. Even if you don't realize it, like that passive listening that you have to have if you're handwriting notes is going to help you out a lot. And then my last piece of advice, and this is something that I know a lot of people struggle with, and it's a big thing for me. Don't forget to have some fun. Like, don't lose yourself in what you're doing. That so much so that you forget to have some fun. Like, take a break. It's okay to take a break every now and then and do something you enjoy to do. So as much as like remember your why is vital, it's important. Remember why you're doing this. Also remember you and who you are. You're not just a student. You're not just an employee. You're you. You're Steven. You're AJ. You're Jimmy. You're, Beth. Be you and don't lose you in the process of getting what you want. Because if you lost you in getting what you want, there's no point in it.
That's one that I have to take maybe a little bit of. Maybe I have to, when this episode releases, I'll have to come back and re-listen to that. I'm certainly guilty of not having enough fun, and I'm actually glad that you mentioned that. I think just for any point in life, what that is to me is an emphasis on your own mental health, and like you said, realizing how dynamic and diverse you are as an individual. You are not just a student. You're not just the nurse, the daycare worker, the bus driver. Like you are a person. You have friends. You have hobbies. You have things that you love, and nurturing all of those things is just as important. I think that was a great and probably the best piece of advice to end on, AJ.
Steve, I'm a gentleman. I'm not going to argue with you. No, I'm kidding. I think that all six pieces of advice. You can't succeed with just taking one of those pieces of advice. You need to do it all. I promise you. Like, it's a world of difference if you just remember what you're doing. You are prepared. You remember have a little bit of fun. You remember to write things out. You just do all of these things, and I promise you it'll be better.
That's it. It's exactly what it comes down to, and having the confidence in yourself and that belief.
Right, that confidence and belief in yourself, which leads to being able to ask the question. Right? Like, I think you need it all.
You do.
But look, Steve, I think this is where we're going to have to wrap up for the episode. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I hope everybody's safe after that flooding and all those instances in New Jersey. And I hope we'll talk to you next week after another semester beginning for Steven and I. Semester 2 for Steve, semester 4 for AJ. We're almost there. We're making our way through. But look, with that, and for Jersey First and Bridging the Gap, I'm AJ Malillo.
I'm Steven Rambola.
Have a wonderful week. Everybody, we'll talk to you next week. And don't forget, put Jersey first. What do you say?